Hello, my name is Julian Mintz. Jim Higgins and I are the authors of the text Strategic Management, published by Dryden Press, which you are utilizing in your course. Today I'd like to take a few minutes to explain the videotape which is designed to accompany 4 of the cases in the text. The videotape is divided into 2 segments. The first segment contains in-class interviews and question and answer sessions with 2 local small business owner-managers, and is designed to give the student an understanding of the personality and some of the motivation of these individuals. The second segment of the tape is material provided by 2 well-known companies, Apple Computer and Walt Disney Companies. This segment of the tape contains formalized addresses by the chief executive officers of these firms, and although it's more formalized, was chosen for its applicability to the course. We hope that you will find this tape both entertaining and informative, and we'd like to thank you for viewing it.
We're pleased this morning to have with us Anna and David Curry, co-owners of Perfume Your Own Park. Anna, would you join us, please?
I'm very glad to be here today because I think it affords a unique opportunity. I haven't been in business 25 or 30 years. I've been in business less than 2 years. But I can give you a perspective about the decisions that we made and the kinds of things that we decided. That's a fresh perspective that hasn't been clouded by rationalization and passage of time. So we'll try to be very candid today and answer your questions honestly and give you some of our reasons for doing things. I'm sure you wondered when you read the information that was given to you why a lady who had no experience in retail at all went into a retail business. And I thought I would address that first. I think one makes career decisions based on 3 things: your past experiences, your goals or dreams that you have for yourself, and how willing you are to take risks. So let's start with the first part of that, with my past experience. I did grow up in a drugstore. My parents were both pharmacists, and so I did have small retail background and had an exposure to cosmetics, fragrances in that drugstore. So there was some past way back there. But my work experience included none. I started off teaching school. Let me say I started off with a liberal arts degree and made no career decisions when I got out of school. I just hopped from thing to thing, not knowing what I wanted to do. And then taught grammar school for a few years. And that was my first career decision, to get out of teaching because it just wasn't lucrative enough. I just couldn't make enough money. I looked around for some things and ended up on a temporary assignment at Tulane University in their personnel operation. They were editing some summary plan descriptions when ERISA went into effect. And from there was offered a permanent staff position as an interviewer, and then went up to employment manager, and then a benefits coordinator for Tulane University. That experience was very good because it was administrative experience, it was organizational ability that I was gaining, and it was managerial experience, managing people. And all of those things were background for owning my own business, even though they weren't directly related to owning my own business. So that was very, very valuable experience, and because of family reasons, I moved from there to Atlanta and went to Georgia Tech as an employment manager, back in employment, but it expanded my experience because this was at the height of the EEOC legislation, and I was involved in a lot of suits, and so with the college, and so I was able to broaden my experience and get a lot of legal expertise that I hadn't had before. I had experience negotiating contracts because as part of the personnel operation with the insurance that you deal with, you're negotiating contracts. And then I was offered the position of Director of Personnel at Rollins, which was my first chance at the whole pie. I had had employment, I had had benefits, but as director was given the responsibility for the whole area. And this was good at putting a whole program together and doing more strategic kind of planning. And it was a very good experience, and I enjoyed, and it was a challenging experience for me. But there came a time when it was not challenging anymore. There was still plenty to do, but I wasn't finding the personal challenge there anymore. And so I had to look at my goals and see what they were. And this is the second part of it. What were my goals and my dreams? One of the things was that I was frustrated with not being able to make decisions and always carry them through. You know, whenever you work for an organization, you work for someone, and that person has a right to say yay or nay to any of your programs or ideas, whether they're good or bad. And so I wanted to be more in control of that. I wanted to be able to make decisions and carry them through. So it looked like then that I was going to have to go into business for myself if I wanted to do that. And that's when I decided I would. I, of course, had to consider the risks involved, and that was the third aspect of it. And risks include financial risk, but not limited to that. Financial risk, my family had to be consulted because there was a personal risk to our family finances, and so we looked at it very carefully, and they were behind me. But it was also taking the risk of leaving everything that I had worked hard for. So I had to decide, was I willing to risk that? After taking a look at the situation and taking what I considered a calculated risk, we read an awful lot, we gathered all the statistics we could. We weren't going to take a foolish risk, but we decided we would take a calculated risk. And that's what brought me to deciding to own my own business. Now, why perfume is the second question. I think, first of all, I was interested in it. If you're going to expend the time, the money, and the energy to do something and do it well, you better be interested in it, because it takes a heck of a lot of work. So I was interested in it. I had an interest for a long time. And I began to read everything I could get my hands on. For 2 or 3 years, we read everything about perfume. I went to the library and got the name of the Fragrance Foundation and went to various directories and indexes and got company names and wrote over 100 letters, and they would tell me other people to write. People were very kind, incidentally, and they're always ready to, most people, ready to give you information. And I just sucked it up like a sponge and learned everything that I could. And I talked to people. I talked to someone who had a perfume shop on Park Avenue before and asked them about it and how did they do and what was good about it and what was bad about it. And I talked to people who were currently in sales of perfumes at department stores and got their opinions. And then I put all that information together and said, you know, the more I find out, the more interested I am in this topic. And so that was a good sign, the fact that my interest was peaking rather than waning. And so we continued to do research, and then we decided we better think about a location. Because besides an interest, you have to have a good location. And you know, I'm sure you've heard location, location, location. That's very important. We looked at Park Avenue for a number of reasons. It gets native as well as tourist trade, and you need both. I think it's very difficult to survive on one or the other. I knew that I didn't want to be in a high-traffic, low-profit item. You can go into a mall with a dime store and make it maybe on dollar items, but that wasn't the kind of high-volume business I wanted. I wanted a more expensive type product that I didn't have to have quite as much volume, because I wanted to be a specialist at it. I wanted to offer something other people were not offering. And so I looked at Park Avenue and said, what doesn't it have? It didn't have a perfumery. It's a relatively new concept for this country. And so because of the location and because of my interest, it kind of meshed, and that's what we had. We had something that Park Avenue didn't have, and I thought I could do it well. And so we now had a location. And then we, of course, had to consider whether we were going to be carrying items that could produce a profit. And again, you have to have enough expensive items if you're not going to have a huge volume to produce a profit. And we felt that perfumes offered that kind of a percentage. So looking at all the materials and looking at all the statistics, and believe me, we gathered as many statistics as we could, it looked like go. And we knew that there were risks. And we knew that the typical 3 years, give it 3 years in order for it to go, that this was the philosophy we'd go on. We tried to ensure some things by my hanging on to a job as long as possible so that we could put the income back into the business. You know, we tried to put as many safeguards into this process as possible. And so we went ahead. We opened Perfumery on Park July 5th, 1984. And that's where we are today with it. And we're having an awfully good time with it. We're continuing to learn. And I think the most special thing of all was to have the dream and to see it become a reality. It's really very, very exciting. I still look back and say, it really happened. And that's the way it is. So I would encourage you now to ask me any questions that you have about it. David Curry is here also, and he's going to answer questions. One important rule that I learned a long time ago was you cannot be an expert in everything, but if you're not, you better have someone around who is. And so David is here to help answer questions because he is the expert on the financial end of the operation. So now do you have some questions? Yeah.
Two questions, both unrelated. First, how did you come about the very favorable lease from the tennis shop? And second, your projected sales and your actual sales were very different. And could you elaborate on that, please?
Okay. I found it very difficult finding a space on Park Avenue. It seemed like I would hear about things after they were already rented. And so I began to walk the avenue. I mean, I got that desperate. I had gone to realtors. I had gone to everybody I knew, and we know a lot of people in Winter Park. But no one was able to let me know things ahead of time. So when all of those things proved not fruitful, I walked the avenue, literally went into the stores and said, I want to start a business. Please let me know if you hear about anything that is becoming available, and then I'll go talk with these people. And so someone did. They told me that the tennis shop they heard wanted to sell, and we went and talked with them. And her first offer was more than I wanted to pay, but these people were ready to get out of business. I think timing, again, is so important. They have to be ready to get out, and they were. Their basic interest was in playing tennis. They were tired of being restricted to the shop, and so I got there at a time when they were ready to let go a little bit, and we talked about what we were willing to pay and what they were willing to take, and that's where we ended up. As far as the difference in projections and reality, we've thought a lot about that, and I think personally that part of our projection did not take into account that we were bringing to this area a whole new concept. We had to sell not only our perfume, but the idea of a perfumery. People are not used to a perfumery here, and so they are used to picking up their perfumes in a department store, wherever they might happen to be. In Europe, of course, especially in France, they have them all over. So people had to learn about us, they had to know what we were, and word had to get out. And so I think there was a longer period for us. Normally your first year, you know, for name recognition, it takes at least a year for people to begin to know who you are. I think it took us a little longer because we had to sell the whole concept. David, did you want to add anything to that?
No, nothing more to contribute to that.
Okay. Yes?
When you were considering expansion, how did you view the risk of adding employees? You were going from a small family-run operation, really, and you were looking at dealing for the first time with problems of employee honesty and inventory shrinkage and the quality of service that you'd be offering. And it was very important to the type of operation you wanted.
Yes.
How did you consider those?
If there was one area I felt particularly suited to consider, it was the area of personnel, because that was where my background was. I know that you have to tighten up controls. You know, we could run a fairly loose ship as long as there was family there. But once you start hiring employees, then you have to have control. And so we had to go over all of our operational techniques to see, you know, that everything was numbered and that there were tight controls. And of course, we consulted with our accountants and with our attorneys and everything to try and set up as control as possible. Service is one of the things that we're selling in our shop, and so that had to be prime consideration in anybody I hired. And that is one of the things that I consider as part of training, which is very important when you're talking about an employee-employer relationship, is to train them in your philosophy and to just set down in the very beginning what you expect. And that was definitely part of my expectation, that service be the utmost. So that's, yes, Dave?
The bankers who were extending us the loan asked the very same question. They said, why in the world did we want to get involved somewhere else where we had a lower degree of control than we have right now? And part of the answer to that is to provide incentives so that the control is self-actualizing or self-fulfilling. Things like providing employees a percentage of the sales as part of their income rather than paying them a straight salary. And so some of the things that we did at the new shop was to set up the proper incentives to help guarantee or to help lessen the probability that employees would take from us.
At the time of the case, it's only 6 months after you opened, and obviously your results aren't what you'd expected, but you're considering growth. What is your rationale, and why were you considering growth at that time, and what were you going to try to accomplish?
Well, there were a couple of things that were involved in that. One thing we found out is that in the United States, the distribution of perfumes by the distributors, they bring the fragrances in, for example, from France, but then they give them to a distributor. And those distributors do not like fooling with accounts that are too small. So there is merchandise that you would like to carry that you can't carry if you have one store. So it became evident to us fairly quickly that if we were going to have the kind of operation we wanted, which was to offer a wide variety but within a limited area of product, that we were going to have more than one store so that people would deal with us, that they would give us the kind of perks that they give to department stores. You know, in this industry there are lots of what they call gifts with purchase and purchase with purchase and all these little perks. Well, they don't want to do that for a one-store operation. So you can really accomplish a lot more if you have a multi-store operation. And that's why we made that
So
decision.
basically from the very beginning you were considering, even when you opened the first store on Park Avenue, you were considering expanding in the near future.
That certainly was a distinct possibility. We certainly thought we would have to move in that direction, and it proved true. Yes?
Could you update us on the general health of the perfumery? Do you have positive cash flow? Have you shown significant progress on your actual sales? And do you have a projected break-even date for your bottom line? Or have you achieved break-even on the bottom line?
I'm going to let David answer that.
The answer to the first question is no. We still have not yet reached a point where we're making a profit in the business. This is still only a year and a half into the operation of the business, so the profits have not materialized yet. We do have a good handle on what it takes to break even, but the problem in determining break-even analysis is you have to assume a level of fixed expenses, and we haven't been able to control our expenses well enough to break even. So the point that we're at right now is that we still are experiencing an effective loss from the operation of the business, which then flows through to our personal income tax liability. So that in effect we can go ahead and lose some amount of money from the business and still make up for it in personal income tax savings. But the cash flow from the business still is positive, so we are still putting more money into it after a year and a half.
To ask a question concerning the financing alternatives that you considered during expansion, and why did you reach whatever your decision you did reach? Perhaps you could elaborate a little more on that.
Were not very realistic alternatives. Things like franchising is a very high-cost barrier to break into, and you have to show that you've got a product that you can sell to a potential franchisee, and we weren't sure that we had that. So the only alternative, if we wanted to open another business, was to either put more of our money in or to try to seek external financing of some sort. And since we only had limited resources, we had to go seek external financing. So when we ultimately did acquire a different business, we went back and renegotiated the loan because we had paid down some of the principal on the loan, and that amounted to some amount of money that we could just reborrow without increasing our liability. And then we also borrowed from the people who sold us the business, so that we're using the cash flows from the business to repay them. Collateral that we had on the outstanding loan to start with was our house, and since we just renegotiated that loan, that still only uses as collateral our house. But the new loan does use inventory as a source of collateral.
In your dreams, do you see you like on like Rodeo Drive or on Park Avenue in New York?
Actually, we were looking at developing a fragrance for the shop, but that is a tremendous capital expenditure that we really, as long as we were doing the expanding and needing capital to go into those areas, we really can't look at that. But that certainly is a possibility in the future.
Where it is located and why you chose this location?
Our new store, which is Perfumery on the Avenue, and it is a separate corporation. Our accountant advised us to do that. It's in Naples, Florida. And we made that decision because it was an existing store that we took over. There was inventory there. There were 18 years of service built up there. It had a reputation. It had a following, and it was making a profit. So it was, in a sense, an opportunity too good to pass up. We had a going business that was a little bit different than our operation here. It has perfumes, but it also has cosmetics, and it was a bath shop. And we are in the process of changing that setup a little bit. But it was there, it was a going business, and it was a good opportunity financially.
Did you keep on the same personnel then down there? Did you bring in any?
Yes, we did. We kept the people that were there because they knew the market. And what we are in the process of doing now is changing the style of the shop, changing the physical layout of the shop, changing some of the inventory in the shop. But it was a very service-oriented person that was there. So the person had the same philosophy, which I felt was critical. And the other things we can, train the people to do the way we want them to do it. So that was a prime consideration. Yes, sir.
But there was one other alternative that was available to us at the time. That was to open a brand new shop in the mall in Palm Beach, in West Palm Beach. And that was a very high-risk alternative because that was not an existing business that had a record of profits, and it didn't already have someone to work in it. And it also would have entailed much higher expenses in order to operate the shop because of the higher square foot rent in the mall. So we had two alternatives, one that was a very high return but high risk alternative in Palm Beach, and one lower risk and lower return alternative in Naples. And given our risk aversion, I guess we chose the lower return alternative.
Conservative. Yes.
What was your banker's reaction as you got more involved in the business and dropped off your other job line and the income from that? Did they start to get queasy about the situation, and particularly how did they regard the new expansion plans in that light?
They were concerned about the expansion, but they were very pleased with the results of Perfumery on Park. We have shown a steady progression, and in fact, each month our percentage increase is higher and higher, and we are doing very well. So the trend was good, and that's, of course, what bankers look at. What's your trend? And thank God we had a good trend. So, that was their prime consideration. It's good, though, because bankers are conservative. And what they make you do is look at what if. And they made us take a long, hard look at whether we wanted to do it. And it made us think through the process. And even after that, we decided to go forward. Well, thank you very much for having me here today. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed your questions. And maybe we'll meet over a boardroom table someday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to Mr. Lawson Wolf, who you'll recognize as the Chief Executive Officer of Claremont Building Supplies and a past president of the Florida Concrete and Products Association. Would you like to join us now, please, Mr. Wolf?
Thank you. I would like to start by telling you a little bit about the Florida Concrete Products Association. The Florida Concrete Products Association is a trade organization made up of about approximately 95% of the producers of concrete products in the state of Florida. The membership is considered by most people in the concrete products industry nationwide as being very strong. As a matter of fact, many state associations and national associations pattern themselves after the Florida Concrete Products Association. It's very easy to see in any non-profit organization where the weaknesses are, but there is a lot of strength in this organization, and I wanted to start the program by telling you these facts. In the state of Florida, there is approximately 16 million cubic yards of concrete produced annually. There are approximately 350 million concrete block produced annually. Now, to perform this task, it takes approximately 24 million tons of sand and rock, and it takes about 5.5 million tons of cement. You put all of that together, it is a very important economic benefit to this state. As a matter of fact, the revenues of those participating firms amount to well over $1 billion. So, starting with that, I would like to open the floor for any questions that you might have about either the Florida Concrete Products Association or about my company, Clermont Builder Supply Incorporated. Yes.
What is the current structure of the Florida Concrete and Product Association? For instance, are the committee members volunteers?
Yes, the structure of the organization is that we have one executive director for the Florida Concrete Products Association. Up until about 2 years ago, there was a sister organization called the Concrete Institute. The Concrete Institute was for the promotion of concrete products. The Concrete Products Association was for the other efforts of the concrete products producers. The organization has been changed, and today there is one executive director, Tom Monahan, who took Stan Hand's place, and all people in the organization report through the various committee structures to Tom Monahan. It is still a very active committee-run organization. The membership of the committees is made up of producers in the marketplace. That is one of the reasons that our organization is very strong, because most of the people who do a lot of the work are people who are in the industry and, of course, very interested in the survival of the industry. Yes?
Did you feel there was a lot of resistance to this change when the new measures were implemented?
There were some resistance, and the resistance was because the cement producers fund a lot of our budget. The cement producers were very concerned about their dollars going into the Concrete Products Association being used for promoting concrete products. They were concerned that the funds that they were providing would go towards staff and go towards legislative efforts, and they wanted to make sure that their money was being used to promote concrete products. And that was one of the reasons it was very difficult to reorganize. The cement producer members had to be convinced that it was going to be better for them as well as the general membership. Yes?
Do cement producers view each other as competitors, or is there any lack of mistrust in each other producers since they are in one organization?
You are asking now, when you say cement producers, are you talking about the concrete product, the organizational members? Yes, I think if you ask most of the membership who their competitor is at a committee meeting, he would look across the table and say, there's my competitor sitting right across the table from me. He would not say that my competitor is the framing supplier or the aluminum industry or the glass industry or the steel stud industry. That is one of the problems in our organizations. We view our competition as being that person that we sit on the committee with, and it's a very difficult problem. Yes.
Well, following, what actual benefit does Clermont derive from membership in the organization, and what is the major business value that you see in the organization?
I look at the Florida Concrete Products Association as having a threefold mission. Mission number one is to promote the use of concrete products in the state of Florida, the correct use. If there's enough business in the state of Florida, I feel like my company has the expertise to get our share of the business. The second function of the concrete products is to work actively in the legislative area on the state level. We are very active legislatively. We have several committees that work in that area because there are many state laws and also agency regulations that affect not only the use of our product, the energy efficiency that it is assigned by the state, but also things like the lien law. How do we collect our money from an individual who does not pay his bills? So the legislative effort is the second and equally important part of our association. And the third part that's important for our association is the Education of the members. We have many seminars. We have accounting seminars, budgeting seminars. We have a very active maintenance committee where people who are involved in the maintenance aspects of the various companies come to a meeting or a program that is put on by a manufacturer who manufactures capital equipment for our industry. So the benefits of the organization are great, and those are the three areas: legislatively, promotionally, and also in the educational area.
You, as former president of the FCPA and now of your own firm as manager with hands-on experience, what is your personal belief the solutions the industry should take to combat the declining residential block sales?
And then this is an area that is very difficult. The association is made up of a lot of people like myself who are a little bit on the tough side as business people. And we all have our own opinions. And we get into a meeting, of course, and everybody has their own opinion. So in asking that question, really, you're asking strictly my opinion, because right now, you see, there is no consensus. All we've got is the committee members who each have their own opinion. And of course, I recognize that the only person in the association who knows all the answers and exactly what we ought to do is me. And probably, I'm sure everybody else figures the same way. But I think that the association has now started on a promotional program that it's been going on for a year now, and there are some very good results that I can tell you about later on, or now if you prefer.
Expand on that.
Okay, our Concrete Products Association, through its sister organization, the Concrete Institute, spent about $50,000 to $60,000 a couple of years ago in promoting our concrete products. The person responsible for promoting those concrete products was Jack Payne, who you will read about in the case. Jack Payne is a good structural engineer, very knowledgeable in the ready-mix concrete business. So most of his time was spent in promoting ways to use ready-mix concrete, tilt-up construction, highway paving, intersections, parking lots, things like that. There was very little expertise by staff members in the area of concrete masonry. And that was recognized, of course, as we started seeing our market share fall. So we have hired, in the meantime, a resident expert on staff whose total function it is to promote concrete masonry. And it's going very well. We have several promotional packets that are available for the public. We have designed a program that goes after the individual homeowner. It goes after the specifier, which is the architect or an engineer, and it goes after the builder-developer. How effective that's going to be, unfortunately, right now, we still do not have a way of measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing. I think we needed to hit all those targets, and we may be doing exactly what we need to do, but it's going to be very difficult for us to measure how well we're doing. The appearance is, we feel like that we're on the right track, but it's based on feel rather than on numbers. We still have no way of measuring actually what usage there is in the marketplace of our product. Most of the numbers we come up with are estimates. I don't know whether I really answered your question or not.
The case mentioned that most of the concrete salesmen were service. They only filled orders. Do you find that in your business you stress that they go out and get aggressively become salespeople and go out and get the business, or are your service people or your salespeople more service people?
They definitely are more service people. We should not title them salesmen. We should call them service representatives. And most of the time, in fact, you can say all of the time, the product that is going to be used for the construction of the home is decided before we even know, or commercial business, is decided before we even know that there is going to be any construction. When we get involved in the project is when the customer needs to make purchases that are required to build whatever the building is to the plans and specifications. And so consequently, our salespeople do not try to instill a need in that customer for concrete block or 2x4s or roof trusses. Those products are needed. My salespeople or representatives need to go convince that customer that we are his best supplier instead of our competitor. And that's one of the reasons that we get the feeling of competitiveness between the members of the organization, because that's who my salesman is competing with most of the time. Yes?
You mentioned earlier the difficulty of making association members recognize other products such as lumber suppliers as being competitors. Would you feel that the rapid growth in Central Florida that you also referred to, advancing from primarily an agricultural-based society to a major metropolitan area, has caused a problem in your industry where management has not progressed as rapidly? Or in other words, would any change be difficult to implement in the industry as far as management?
There have been major changes in our industry. When I started in the business over 20 years ago, most of the members of the Florida Concrete Products Association and most of the producers in the industry were independently owned, similar to mine, family organizations. In the last several years, we have seen a trend towards multinational companies, vertically integrated companies, buying out the smaller producers and, of course, putting new plants in. So the complexion of the industry has changed tremendously. It is now an industry where the majority of the products sold are furnished by very large concerns. And that has had an effect on the management, because as you get these very large concerns, of course, you get organizations that are able to raise money through stock sales and through bonds and so forth. And it's changed the complexion of the industry tremendously, and I'd say that the expertise in the management area is much better today than it was 15 years ago, because you have the experts involved in the industry today.
The threat to the cement products industry resulting from the long-term decline in the residential block sales appears to be related to a lack of reliable data on the market. Today you still complain of a lack of data with respect to the effectiveness of your recent promotional efforts. How long can this $14 billion industry afford to exist without reliable market data?
The $14 billion industry that you referred to, I assume, is the total construction industry, and there may be parts of that total construction industry that have better data than the concrete products, which is more like a $1 billion industry, but that's still very large. That was one of the reasons that when I was president of the Concrete Products Association, I felt that we needed that tool so we would be able to measure what we were doing in the marketplace. We still have not done that. We know we need to advertise. We know we need to promote our product. We're doing that. We have raised the money to do that. But you're exactly right. We need that measuring stick so we know how effective we are, and we know what % of the market in Florida we're getting. Most of the information that we get is national information, and Florida is a very unique state. Florida is a state that uses more concrete block than any other state. More concrete block consumption per individual in the state of Florida than any other state. And we should be the leader, and we should have that tool, but we don't, and I do not see it forthcoming. Yes.
You said that the FCMPA is very active at the state level, and Florida depends very much on this industry. What is the possibility of receiving more assistance or influence from the state to remedy the situation of the declining sales in the residential concrete block use in the future?
That would be very difficult for us to get favored treatment from the state of Florida or from agencies involved in the state of Florida, because there are other building materials that have uses. There's, of course, the lumber industry, there's the steel industry, and the members of that industry would not look very favorably on the state trying to help the concrete products producers at their expense. We do try to promote the fact that our industry mines the raw materials, produces the raw materials, and uses the finished product all within this state. And so really we get a much better economic benefit from the use of concrete than some of the other products. But there's not very much expectation that the state's going to help us. One way that the state can help us is being very honest with the energy efficiency that is given or allowed or recognized, I should say, in concrete block. Most of the energy codes that have been used, you know, in 1972, 73, when the Arab oil boycott hit, all of a sudden everybody was very interested in energy efficiency, and the wood people did a very effective job of convincing most people that a frame house is more energy efficient. The fact is, in Florida, which is an air conditioning state and not a heating state, where most of our heat gain and loss is through radiated heat rather than conducted heat, concrete block are a very effective and a very efficient form of building. That was not recognized until our association did the testing, did the programs, the computer programs necessary to prove that point, more or less forced the state to recognize that our product is a viable building material for exterior wall construction. I appreciate very much your allowing me to come be a part of your class today. I hope I've answered your questions, and it's good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that look at some of the highlights of last year. We are a rare and fortunate company to get the television news attention that we do. It's important to our businesses and also makes our annual meetings quite unique. Michael will review motion picture and television activity for the company in a few minutes. Right now, I'd like to report on our spectacular theme park operations, our consumer products division, and the Arvida Disney Corporation, which is making tremendous contributions in community development. As you know, we began a new chapter in international theme park developments recently with the announcement of our Euro Disneyland project in France. On December 18th, Michael signed a preliminary agreement with leaders of the French Republic to locate the park in Marne-la-Vallée, just 20 miles east of the center of Paris. That agreement ended some 2 years of searching and followed the evaluation of more than 200 possible sites in France and in Spain. There are substantive issues to negotiate before we reach a definitive agreement, but we plan to open a Magic Kingdom park in Marne-la-Vallée by late 1990 or early 1991. Eventually, Euro Disneyland developments will encompass several thousand acres of outdoor recreation, shopping, hotels, business centers, and perhaps a second theme park. Spain was a very attractive site for the park, but France presented key economic advantages. A prime site on the outskirts of Europe's favorite city, a tie-in to the Paris metro subway system, excellent highway and airline connections. Paris is also a major center of tourism and has the population density to support year-round park attendance and workforce requirements. More than 10 million people live within a 30 square mile area of the Euro Disneyland site, and more than 100 million people live within just 300 miles. We are seeking qualified financial participants in this great European venture, and we believe the interest and support will be available. We expect to form a parent French company and begin site preparation on Euro Disneyland sometime in 1986. We will be a minority owner, as well as benefiting from park royalties and facilities management. In 1985, we had our finest year in the history of Disney theme park operations. Disneyland, Walt Disney World, and Tokyo Disneyland combined attracted more than 44 million guests, and the combined revenues from those operations totaled more than $1.1 billion. Those incredible results reflect superb management by Dick Nunes and his staff, and the dedication of Disney cast members throughout the organization. You have to be tremendously impressed with the quality of these Disney people and their skills, and most of all, the commitment that they bring to the job of managing the theme park operations of your company. That commitment helped make 1985 a milestone year for Disneyland, which had a year-long 30th anniversary celebration and record attendance. It started when Jack Lindquist and his marketing team created a $12 million sweepstake program to reward guest attendance. Wed Imagineers built the amazing Gift Giver Extraordinaire to keep an accurate computer count at Disneyland's front gate, and it signaled a prize winner with every 30th click of the turnstiles. During the calendar year, Disneyland's guests received more than 400,000 prizes, including 400 new General Motors cars. The gift program made Disneyland the most popular media attraction in Southern California. The coverage included a 2-hour primetime NBC TV special called Disneyland's 30th Birthday Celebration. It was aired in February and repeated later in the year. On Disneyland's official birthday on June 17th, 77,000 guests came for a non-stop 24-hour party filled with special events. During that time, we counted television news crews by the dozens, and Disneyland's birthday ranked as a world event via our new satellite uplink. In August, we welcomed our 250 millionth guest to Disneyland, who became our super grand prize winner of the year. There were a couple of days of anxious waiting around the gate, watching the attendance count on display. I will never forget hovering just around the gate with my wife Luann and Jack Lindquist while the board counted up the numbers until we reached, at 10:30 on a Saturday morning, the Gift Giver Extraordinaire clicked off 250 million. Out came, as luck would have it, a cute 3-year-old boy from Anchorage, Alaska named Brooks Charles Arthur Burr, together with his parents, all right out of central casting. We couldn't have planned it better for all the television cameras that were there that day. I was there to award Brooks his prizes, a new top-of-the-line Cadillac, and 30,000 miles of air travel on PSA Airlines. What I'm about to tell you is not apocryphal. After handing over the keys to his father to the new Cadillac and a PSA Gold Pass to his mother, I casually asked what they did. "I'm a Chrysler salesman," said Dad. You're really not going to believe this. "And I'm a stewardess on Alaskan Airlines," said the mother. True. We added a new summertime attraction at Disneyland for teenagers called Videopolis. It's an outdoor club where young people can come in the evening and dance to live and videotape music in a wholesome environment, and it has proved to be very popular. And as we announced last year, Star Wars filmmaker George Lucas, working with the Wed Imagineers, is creating an innovative theme attraction for Disneyland. The ride, which employs his Star Wars characters and an exciting simulator technology, will open this November. Walt Disney World also had a great 1985. The attendance gains were significant in part because we began our own ambitious promotional and advertising campaign outside the state of Florida for the first time. Our television commercials ran in 51 eastern markets over 8 weeks beginning in February. In those TV ads, we reminded families in the cold Northeast and Midwest that the world's most popular destination resort complex was waiting for them to enjoy together down here in sunny Florida. We're doing it again this year, all under the leadership of, I think, one of the finest marketing teams ever put together anywhere in the United States, the Matadors. We promoted our first toll-free telephone number for Walt Disney World And in the first month, something like 1.5 million calls came in for information and reservations. More than 48,000 calls came the first day we ran that commercial. The previous all-time high had been 14,000 calls in a single day. Also, we did not rely just on television spots. Walt Disney World's marketing team, the Matadors, flew Disney characters to more than 120 cities. They called on mayors, hospitals, radio stations, schools, and all that helped generate awareness of Disney attractions in Florida. We also were supported by network television coverage of our colorful Christmas and Easter parades. By the time summer vacation rolled around, Walt Disney World was having a banner season. There were many first-time events at Walt Disney World in 1985. Mickey danced with the Rockettes from Radio City Music Hall as part of the Star-Spangled Salute to America show at Epcot Center. Epcot Center also introduced a weekend Skaleidoscope on and over World Showcase Lagoon and special late-night entertainment events at the Magic Kingdom and elsewhere in the resort complex. Walt Disney World expanded overnight accommodations for guests with more vacation villas, additions to the golf resort in the Polynesian Village, and major new dining facilities were added in the China Showcase. We announced plans for a Norway exhibit in World Showcase and plans for a new hotel, the 900-room Grand Floridian, near the Polynesian Village. In July, we revealed plans for a new themed complex, the Disney MGM Studio Tour. It will be Walt Disney World's third greatest attraction, covering about 100 acres. It will be a working studio for the production of motion pictures and television programs, as well as a participatory experience for our guests. With our greatly expanded production schedule in Burbank, the new facilities will allow us to eventually double our production facilities while providing an added source of revenue from Florida. MGM will not be a partner in the new attraction. We have negotiated with MGM and United Artists for the use of some of Hollywood's oldest and most famous logos, film excerpts, and memorabilia. We plan to create a ride-through tour that covers the history and nostalgia of Hollywood, as well as some of the magic of movie making and entertainment as well. Also in 1985, two other very exciting projects were shaping up for their debut this year. The Living Seas Pavilion at Epcot Center's Future World opened last month as the largest man-made oceanographic environment on this planet. Here's Mickey and me again as I trade one-liners with Michael on the other side of the glass wall through a two-way mic built into my faceplate. Living Seas is presented by United Technologies, and the sheer size and complexity of this attraction is unbelievable. Almost as unbelievable, I might add, as the effect it is having every day, even as I speak this morning, on attendance at Epcot Center. Someone said to me just before I walked in today, Frank, it looks like those first 2 months when Epcot first opened all over again just because of the Living Seas. The second project opening in the spring at both Epcot Center and Disneyland is a 15-minute, three-dimensional film called Captain EO. This film may become the most popular attraction in Disney theme parks. It features superstar Michael Jackson, it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and executive producer was George Lucas. It was filmed and edited by the finest technicians in our industry. It will be shown at the Journey into Imagination Pavilion at Epcot Center and a newly constructed theater in Tomorrowland at Disneyland, both presented by Eastman Kodak. Tokyo Disneyland continues to prove Disney's international popularity. Your Disney Board of Directors met in Japan last April on the occasion of the park's second anniversary, and we are all enormously impressed by the work of the Oriental Land Company in maintaining and continuing quality of the unique Disneyland attractions and entertainment. Boy, have they captured the Disney culture. In its first 30 months of operations, Tokyo Disneyland drew more than 25 million guests. In the single month of August last year, the park had an attendance of more than 2 million. That stands as the best one-month attendance record for any Disney theme park anywhere. Let me turn to the Consumer Products Organization, which is perhaps one of the most far-reaching and most successful parts of our company. Bo Boyd and his team do a remarkable job of managing this operation, which not only includes several divisions, but is literally made up of millions of parts. Those parts involve character merchandise of virtually every description, including clothing. What is really phenomenal is that after 57 years, Mickey Mouse has suddenly become the international rage in designer clothes. European designers started the trend. Then J.G. Hook launched its Mickey & Co. women's wear collection during the 1984 Christmas season and saw its sales quickly triple its projections. Next, J.G. Hook expanded its Mickey line for men and women, and suddenly Mickey and Minnie and other characters are decorating just about every item of wearing apparel you can think of. Disney character clothing is now sold at most of the nation's best-known department stores, and it's being worn everywhere from beaches to boardrooms. In fact, Mickey and Minnie have become such upscale models that our legal department is having to work overtime just bringing actions against unlicensed vendors. Consumer products is easily the largest licensing business anywhere, and the sheer diversity of plush toys, watches, games, food, and other items of endorsements is a wonder to behold. Our new Disney Clothiers store at Disneyland, I think probably my favorite piece of real estate in the world, is an outgrowth of the Emporium, which has more sales per square foot than any other retail store in America. Not just Disney, but any retail store in America. Consumer Products also operates a huge publications business. In fact, it has been enormously successful for 50 years, and Disney character books produced by licensed companies are popular throughout the world. Our music company is the largest children's record company in the world. Last year, the company received platinum awards in recognition of more than 2 million sale units of its Mickey Mouse disco album and Star Wars single recordings, and other records and albums qualified for gold awards. In sales promotion, the Consumer Products Group is broadly involved in tie-ins with various companies that use our characters to help promote their products, such as soft drinks or fast foods. For example, over 15 million plush items were sold in connection with Mickey's Christmas Carol TV promotion tie-in last year. Finally, Consumer Products also includes educational media, which markets educational films, film strips, videotapes, and computer software on a broad scale to schools and to groups. Educational media also supports the Epcot Center Teachers Center, which has attracted more than 60,000 visiting school teachers in just the last 2 years. That brings me to our community development segment, now identified as the Arvida Disney Corporation and led with tremendous effectiveness by Chuck Cobb as Chairman and Chief Executive Officer. Arvida Disney has clearly become one of our most valuable and productive resources, with great emphasis by Michael and me on its development capabilities. Not only is it a new solid revenue source, but it provides our company with some of the finest land management, planning and development talents available anywhere. Disney obtained in Arvida one of the nation's premier planned resort and community development companies. In fact, Arvida has more than 20 high-quality residential and resort communities in development in 3 states, and its assets include 20,000 acres of land for future development. Here in Florida, Arvida's home base. Its resort and leisure-style communities, including such famous developments as Boca West, Longboat Key near Sarasota, and Sawgrass near Jacksonville. In Georgia, there are 3 large planned Arvida communities just north of Atlanta, and in California, Arvida is developing the 6,500-acre Costa de Caza community in Orange County, south of Disneyland. In 1985, Arvida opened its largest development, Weston, a 10,000-acre residential community west of Fort Lauderdale. Our Disney characters helped make that opening a great success. Within 25 years, Weston is expected to grow into a town of 60,000 residents. Arvida resources also include a commercial and industrial division, realty sales, financial services, and a property management group. But the real significance of Arvida is the expertise we have gained in bringing Disney's considerable real estate assets into focus so that we can begin exploiting their real values. There is no higher priority in this company at the present time. What we did was blend some of the Arvida Corporation skills in land planning and development with the skills of some of our Imagineers and theme park management. We put those skills together in what we call the Disney Development Company, a truly exciting part of our company. And we asked these planners to consider the best possible use of Disney properties. And especially, we asked the Disney Development Company team to give its planning priorities to Walt Disney World. Walt Disney World is a priority because it's practically a national treasure. Considering that $2 billion has been invested in what was intended by Walt Disney to be the world's ultimate community. The Disney planners did an exhaustive study of Walt Disney World and gave us very creative ideas for long-term developments. And then we asked some of the nation's best-known futurists, many of whom Michael just identified, to consider those concepts and tell us what they thought we should do. The result, after several days of brainstorming last spring, was complete agreement that our Disney planners had done an outstanding job. They agreed that our first obligation is to continue to build on our entertainment strengths and to create a place where people should come to be entertained, to live, to work, and to play. On that premise, we, Michael and I especially, are spending an enormous amount of time with Disney Development Company planning the next 30 years of Walt Disney World's development. We will announce a master plan within the year. We've already announced the studio tour and the Grand Floridian Hotel. This spring, we also will begin constructing our first non-resort housing. We will start with a 444-unit apartment complex, and that may expand to more than 800 units later on. We will soon begin Disney Island, which Michael referred to, an exciting nighttime entertainment, shopping, and restaurant complex. Further down the road, we have plans for additional hotels and entertainment facilities, and one day an Epcot Enterprise Park to serve clean light industry, as well as being a showplace and an attraction in its own right. Each future development will be the direct result of the tremendous support provided by the Arvida Disney Corporation, which has also played a major role in site selection of major attractions, including Euro Disneyland. Thank you very much for your attention. It's now Michael's turn.
It is my pleasure to report on the progress the company has made in both motion pictures and television. But first, I thought I would share with you an amazing day that to me symbolizes the state of the company's vibrancy and strength. If you will, let me freeze frame December 31st, 1985, New Year's Eve. It's a day I'll remember for a long time, for it so well reflects on the year past and at the same time mirrors the current vitality of the Walt Disney Company and sets the stage for the future. By the evening before I had left the office, we had a New Year's Day attendance report from Japan. More than 110,000 guests had welcomed in the new year with us, somehow squeezing into Tokyo Disneyland, which, by the way, is impossible. At Walt Disney World, the parking lots were filled to capacity. Motorists were being warned by radio and road signs that a near traffic jam was developing on all roads leading to our parks. When the last guest had entered the Magic Kingdom and Epcot Center, the count was 128,000 people, topping the previous day for a two-day total of 250,000 people. More than 60,000 people welcomed 1986 in at Disneyland, bringing to a close the year-long 30th anniversary celebration and an all-time record-breaking year. For those who couldn't get to the parks, they went to the movies or watched Disney on television. The fourth reissue of 101 Dalmatians earned $1.5 million at the box office on that day alone, contributing to the best week for any Disney picture ever made. On New Year's Eve, television viewers watched a Disney-themed Orange Bowl parade with Disney characters and other entertainers on NBC. The CBS television network brought Walt Disney World to the nation with such contemporary entertainers as Kool and the Gang and Sheila E., bringing in the new year from various stages in the Magic Kingdom and Epcot Center. At 36 movie theaters, again the same night across the nation, packed houses celebrated with a sneak preview of Touchstone's Down and Out in Beverly Hills. And for a change of pace, after a full day of watching one bowl game after another, Disney on January 1st provided the halftime entertainment at the Orange Bowl with a spectacular salute on NBC themed to the opening of the Living Sea Pavilion. As Frank Wells and I wrote in our letter to you in the annual report, in the opening line, what a year it has been. It has also been a year of management transition, accelerated change, and many accomplishments we can all be proud of. The first complete year for Frank and myself has been marked by learning and asking questions about the established ways things get done in the business, and then asking why. And then, is there a better way? Often, there was no better way. Disney did it just great. Sometimes it did lead to some fundamental reevaluations in some of our enterprises. It's been a period of mutual education, getting to know the company and the company getting to know us. In addition to being the biggest cheerleaders in the company and having a lot of fun, we have worked to encourage fresh thinking about the vast potential of all Disney enterprises. Specifically, we have worked at motivating constructive change, instilling a positive sense of direction and attitude, and encouraging new creativity across the board. Our challenge is to create an ever more innovative organization, one that can act and capitalize on the many promising but unexplored ideas laying dormant within it, while at the same time letting the creative community outside know their ideas are more than welcome too. We are an idea company, unusual among companies our size, because we derive our primary revenue from human creativity rather than from material resources, from what people dream, write, create, and perform. Without compelling entertainment ideas, we would wither. In no other areas of the company are ideas more important than in motion pictures and television. For in turn, successes in these businesses set off a creative chain reaction. They become the locomotive that propels the entire company forward. It was exactly a year ago today at our last shareholders meeting that I delineated our overall objectives in motion pictures and television. I said then that our ultimate goals included producing motion pictures at a rate consistent with a number of films being released at other picture companies. In addition, I said we would accelerate animated feature production. I also said the studio is equally determined to become a major television supplier of network programming as well as a supplier in television syndication. My report is on the process we have made toward meeting those objectives. We have moved fast, and I think we even surprised the entertainment industry with the speed with which we brought Disney into the forefront as a worldwide theatrical force and television producer. Under the aggressive leadership of Chairman Jeff Katzenberg and President Rich Frank, our motion picture and television operations were methodically rebuilt and reorganized into a division that is recognized as one of the biggest and most talent-rich of any studio. The studio's goals are to produce high-quality films and television programming while controlling negative costs and building the strong creative relationships and the close business relationships with theater owners. Beginning with a little more than fresh ideas a year ago, the studio has attracted the finest talent available in the creative community. More than 60 of the most highly regarded executives from all facets of the entertainment industry responded to the opportunity to staff new and expanding studio units. That executive talent gave Walt Disney Studios a new relationship with outstanding creative professionals, including writers, producers, directors, cinematographers, actors, and actresses. The result was a massive mobilization of new production capabilities in Hollywood. We're working with such top talents as the Airplane team of David and Jerry Zucker and Jim Abrams. Susan Harris, responsible for writing the television comedy classic Soap, Benson, and Touchstone Films' own Golden Girls. David Bombeck, co-producer of Witness. Dan Petrie Jr., writer of the enormous hit Beverly Hills Cop. Cindy Williams of Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley. Michael Crichton, the author of The Andromeda Strain. And Mike Farrell of MASH, and many, many, many others. We have more than 80 projects in active development. In 1986, we'll release 8 or 9 original films and 3 reissues from the classics. By 1987, we should be at a major studio release level with some 12 to 14 pictures. With increasing frequency, entertainment industry observers and the media call Disney the most exciting place to work in the creative community. They are saying it's where the action is. In our highly competitive industry with a limited Hollywood talent pool, that image is a requirement for success. Disney will no longer be a studio of last resort for movie makers, but at the cutting edge of the entertainment industry. At the same time, we do not intend to depart from our unique heritage. A number of pictures we will be making every year will be live-action features for family viewing in the best tradition of Walt Disney. Among recent live-action releases, The Journey of Natty Gann and One Magic Christmas are Disney pictures in the truest sense. Both earned exceptional praise as family motion pictures that appeal to today's audiences. The Journey at Natty Gann, currently playing at theaters in the Northeast, stars bright newcomer Meredith Salinger as a Depression-era teenager who makes a dangerous cross-country trip in search of her father. One Magic Christmas stars Academy Award-winning actress Mary Steenburgen in a story about a disillusioned young mother who rekindles the spirit of hope that is Christmas in a miraculous experience. Natty Gann served another important purpose. It provided a revealing lesson on the power of the name Disney for new members of our marketing and advertising team. They tested advertisements for Natty Gann with and without prominent displays of the Disney name. When the Disney name was highlighted, box office results improved an astounding 20 to 40%. At this juncture, I'd like to review with you features either currently in release or soon to be released under both the Disney and Touchstone labels. First is the film that's surely foremost on your minds, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, starring Richard Dreyfuss, Nick Nolte, and Bette Midler. It opened last weekend throughout the country to a torrent of favorable reviews, as well as a touch of notoriety for being the first Disney film, but of course not Disney, but Touchstone, ever to receive an R rating. Paul Mazursky, perhaps the most gifted social satirist in the American film industry, wrote and directed Down and Out in Beverly Hills. The film was released, and again I emphasize, under the Touchstone label. Let me discuss for a moment some issues raised by Down and Out in Beverly Hills. 2 years ago, the former Disney management announced the formation of the Touchstone Films, a new label designed to enable Disney to compete in the more adult-oriented market. There were compelling reasons for the creation of Touchstone. At the time, Disney was losing the teenage and young adult audience that dominates film-going market. It was also unable to compete for the top creative talent in the industry. Touchstone was intended to differentiate between Disney's traditional family-oriented products and films with themes and content not appropriate for youngsters. Touchstone's first film, Splash, released in March of 1984, turned into the company's best ever box office hit. Critics and the public no longer associated the Touchstone name with Disney when Country, with Jessica Lange and Sam Shepard, was released in the fall of 1984. Touchstone Pictures have caused absolutely no negative impact on the company or its related businesses to date, and we don't anticipate any particular conflict with the release of Down and Out in Beverly Hills. It's a fine comedy with biting social commentary, and we're proud of it. It's been treated well by the critics, and I urge you to go see it. And it is a smash hit. This spring, we will release another Touchstone film called Offbeat, which features two appealing young actors, Judge Reinhold and Meg Tilly, who was nominated yesterday for an Academy Award for her performance in Agnes of God. Reinhold, you'll remember, played the role of the young police lieutenant in Paramount's Beverly Hills Cop. He plays a young librarian impersonating a New York City cop in Offbeat. In the course of the movie, he inadvertently becomes a hero and falls in love with Meg Tilly. The story is light and contemporary. And I also don't think it will be an R. We also will reissue another classic animated feature, Sleeping Beauty, this spring. Sleeping Beauty was last released in 1979, and we anticipate a strong box office for this timeless tale of good and evil. Another Disney animated classic to be reissued this summer is The Lady and the Tramp, which was originally produced in 1955. This summer will also see the release of Disney's all-new animated feature with the working title of Basil of Baker Street, which follows the exploits of a mouse version, that is, of Sherlock Holmes in Victorian England. All in all, I can report that the studio has never been busier. For the first time, Disney has 4 live-action pictures in production at the same time. In addition to Basil, pre-production work is underway on Oliver Twist, another animated feature for the summer of 1987. As the world leader in animated features, it's obvious we would like to make more of them. Typically, because of all the artistry involved, they have required more than 4 years of work to produce. Under Vice Chairman Roy Disney, we are moving quickly to become the state-of-the-art leader in computer-assisted animation. Roy's contributions will eventually speed up the production cycle without crimping the creativity of our animation artists or the quality of the results. Now, let me briefly run down the live action pictures in production. First, there's Ruthless People, a touchstone film directed by the team responsible for Airplane, one of the highest grossing features ever. Bette Midler returns to star in an encore touchstone performance, along with Danny DeVito, a star in Romancing the Stone and Jewel of the Nile, and the long-running TV series Taxi. Judge Reinhold also stars. It's a hilarious comedy, I hope, about a kidnapping with a modern-day twist on the O. Henry novel, The Ransom of Red Chief. In other words, they don't want the woman back they kidnapped. Tough Guys is another contemporary comedy adventure about a pair of notorious robbers who faced the strange new world of Los Angeles in the 1980s after 30 years in prison. Cast are two film legends, Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster. In the hometown of the Super Bowl champs, the Chicago Bears, we're filming The Color of Money, directed by Martin Scorsese. It's a sequel of sorts to the film classic The Hustler, in which Paul Newman starred as Fast Eddie Felson, the young pool shark. This time, Paul is the senior pool whiz instead of Jackie Gleason. His challenger is Tom Cruise, star of Risky Business, Taps, and All the Right Moves. Now in production, just south of here in Fort Lauderdale, is a PSO Buena Vista film called, i.e. Disney, called Flight of the Navigator. This is a family-oriented story about a youngster who vanishes at the age of 12 and returns to his family after 8 years, but he hasn't aged at all. It's directed by Randall Kleiser, who made Grease and Blue Lagoon. It's been our view from the beginning that the results of our film efforts must be judged on a body of work rather than any individual picture. Perhaps the most critical achievement for the company this year has been our return to network television. A network TV presence is virtually and vitally important to Disney, for TV acts as a marketing and creative catalyst for all our interrelated businesses. A year ago this time, we were at 0. This season, Disney's comeback on all 3 networks included the hit situation comedy, The Golden Girls, 2 critically acclaimed Saturday morning animated shows, The Wuzzles on CBS and The Adventures of Gummy Bears on NBC, and the return just last week of the Disney Sunday movie to a familiar place for generations of viewers. Hailed as the funniest new show of the season, The Golden Girls reflects the ups and downs of single life in Miami for 4 older women. Quickly labeled Miami Nice, it stars Bea Arthur, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty. The NBC show has received a rain of praise from television writers, as well as reestablishing an audience for Saturday night primetime television. But nowhere is a network presence more important than Sunday evening. For nearly 30 years, the Disney name was synonymous with Sunday night television. Today's young parents who grew up watching Disney in their childhood now have the opportunity to share Disney programs with their own children. Last Sunday, we returned to ABC with a new series. I hope many of you were able to see our opening show. This new series represents quality family entertainment in the spirit of Walt Disney, but it's also different from anything in the past. The stories are contemporary and more sophisticated and will cover a wider range of subject areas that were seen on Wonderful World. In addition to continuing series, we have a deal with NBC for a variety of primetime specials. There will be holiday specials using vintage Disney cartoons, brand new animation with Mickey, Donald, and the gang back in contemporary stories. There will be musical variety shows from the parks and other programs featuring the newest innovations at Epcot Center, like the recent special on the Living Seas. Another bright spot on the Disney scene is the Disney Channel. The Disney Channel continues to be the fastest growing pay cable service in the country. At year end, we had approximately 2.5 million subscribers, and we were carried by more than 2,500 cable systems. The channel became profitable a year ago after only 20 months of operations. We have strong and capable new management in the person of John Cook, who was previously with Times Mirror Cable. He is, in turn, further strengthening his organization. The Disney Channel won the industry's coveted ACE Award for the best music series with our own DTV, and Art Carney was named Best Actor for his role in The Undergrads, a movie we made for the Disney Channel. In addition to all of that, we've moved into the highly lucrative syndication market. Never in the history of television syndication has a library the size of the Disney's been held off the market, and the Disney product stands up in terms of time and quality. Bob Jockman, formerly responsible for marketing more than 40 syndicated projects at Paramount, heads our new domestic television group. After only 5 months at Disney, his organization structured 2 major packages for independent television stations, creating a new revenue stream for our company. They are Disney Magic 1, a collection of 25 feature films, and the second package, From Wonderful World of Disney, includes 178 hours of live action, animation, frontier adventure, and true life nature programs. The initial reaction has been excellent. To date, sales have been made to television stations in New York, Washington, Chicago, Phoenix, Los Angeles, and many other cities. Disney is also playing a prominent role in the fastest growing segment of the entertainment industry, the exploding market for video cassette entertainment. In the fierce new technology competition for that technology, the video cassette quickly passed the video disc, left the video game in the dust, outmaneuvered pay cable movie channels, and made consumers ignore their home computers. In 1985, industry-wide revenues from the rental and sale of pre-recorded video cassettes reached $3.3 billion, fast approaching movie box office receipts of $4 billion. From a zero start 5 years ago, Disney's home video revenues last year surpassed the $100 million mark, and our share of the market continues to grow, particularly in the children's cassette market, known in the industry as the kid vid market. We now have over 200 titles on the cassette market. The limited release of the first great Disney classic, Pinocchio, last summer earned more than $11 million. We still feel positive that we will be able to re-release Pinocchio in theaters some 5 years from now to a new generation of young families. I will end where I began, with motion pictures. Despite all the new technologies here and yet to come, the heartbeat of this company is the motion picture. The theatrical motion picture is still the great American date, and there is no substitute for the experience of watching a film out of the home, on the big screen, in comfortable darkness, sharing emotion and laughter with other people. I have the passionate conviction that the theater is the place to see movies. Films are made with theater showings in mind. They are made with scope and scale, with density of color and texture and action that you can hardly find on television. It's where Disney began and where Disney will always be. Thank you.
Good morning. Today marks almost the 4th anniversary of Macintosh, and to look around this exhibition is to be astonished at just how much has been accomplished in such a short period of time. You know, the range of solutions and products on display here at Macworld Expo is a tribute to both the original design decisions that established the Macintosh interface and to the adjustments that we made along the way to opening Macintosh to broader participation. Now this week we've introduced a new series of products. There's a family of laser writers which extend our leadership in desktop publishing. Apple Share PC, a desktop communications product which makes MS-DOS computers full partners in the Apple Share file server. And the Apple MIDI interface. That's a communications bridge between Macintosh, electronic music, which was inspired by the tremendous support that we've had from professional musicians. Now, all of these products reflect your enthusiasm and support for a technology that is changing the way that we work, learn, think, and play. And we're privileged to live in a really extraordinary time. It's a time of profound changes, not just in high technology. It's a time in which the key economic resources in the world have changed from capital, labor, and raw materials to include knowledge, individual innovators, and information. It's a turning point of an era. And the world is in this passage from an industrial age into an information age. The technologies which are emerging today will give us the ability to explore and convey and create knowledge as never before. Now this has enormous implications for us as individuals, as well as for our institutions. We've had an opportunity that is given to only a few generations in history. And I believe that if we respond with our best creative energies, that we can unleash a new renaissance of discovery and learning. In our global economy, we're moving from a hierarchical order to one of interdependence. Not long ago, the United States stood unchallenged at the top of the world's economic hierarchy, drawing on the consuming power of an affluent population. This country was built on a strong industrial base. Our manufacturing companies added value to natural resources through technological know-how. The institutions we built up at the height of the industrial age were once sufficient and productive. But there's a dangerous time lag built into even the most successful institutions. They are created at one time in response to some particular opportunity in some given historical context. And then, as the context shifts, the institution finds itself carrying excess baggage that's no longer useful. Today, we see institutions once dominant in world markets like steel and manufacturing in decline. Economically, we're not at the top of the pyramid, but rather just one node along the network. And our industrial know-how has migrated to many newly industrialized nations like Korea and Taiwan, Singapore, Mexico, and Brazil, and in some cases, they've improved on it. But what is at risk is not simply our standard of living, but also the health of the world economy. The global economic system functions like a biological ecosystem. An unbalance in one sector can affect the whole, as we are seeing with the fluctuations of the stock market and the dollar. Now, I like to use the analogy of a shrinking rainforest of Brazil. Some 80% of the world's oxygen comes from the rainforests, yet we lose through the cutting of trees and the clearing of land, a land mass the size of the state of Nebraska every year. Now, if we keep on doing that long enough, we will not only scar the natural and social ecosystem of Brazil, but the decreasing amount of oxygen in the atmosphere will alter the entire ecosystem of our planet. As a nation, we are living beyond our means. We are squandering resources, both natural and economic. We're no longer creating enough economic value to sustain our lifestyle, and we're falling deeper into debt. If our population loses the ability to afford our products, it will also not be able to afford Japanese automobiles, electronics from the Pacific Rim countries, and so forth. And that would have a tremendous impact on the macroeconomic ecosystem of the world. Well, there's a compelling need to find new ways to continue to create value in the world. And I believe that in order to do that, our businesses and education systems must be designed to foster innovation. Yet innovation has never come through bureaucracy and hierarchy. It's always come from individuals. So how will the organizations designed to thrive in the 19th and early 20th centuries learn to contribute to the 21st? Only by focusing on individuals. The key strength of the 21st century organizations will be not their size or structure, but their ability to support the creative contributions of many individuals. And we must develop new patterns of organization that promote alignment and collaboration while avoiding rigidity and stagnation. Communication in the new organization will be more fluid, action more spontaneous. I think of the speed and agility of basketball compared to the massed force of football, or a jazz combo trading solos compared to a marching band locked in step. The individuals who will succeed as contributors in these new organizations also need to change. In fact, change will be the one constant in their careers. Individuals need to have tremendous flexibility to be able to move from one company to another or from one industry to another. And those who are best prepared to do that will be the most successful. You know, we used to talk about taking a position with the firm. Now those are revealing words, position and firm. They're very rigid terms. If you're only going to take one position, you can only get by with one point of view. In the information age, however, flexibility will be the critical foundation for success. Future generations will need more than just mastery of subject matter, but mastery of learning. Education will not simply be a prelude to a career, but a lifelong endeavor. Now, some of the important elements that will promote this new paradigm for lifelong learning are the development of conceptual skills and the ability to test reality against multiple points of view, the nourishment of individual creativity and encouragement of exploration, and the encouragement of collaboration and emphasis on clear communication. But we must prepare everyone, not just professional scholars, to embark on a lifetime of learning and discovery. Tomorrow's students will not simply be learners, passively absorbing subject matter, but more like researchers, actively exploring their environment. But to work in research is to recognize that knowledge does not reside privately in individual minds or textbooks or journals or libraries or laboratories or databases. Knowledge resides in a complex web that encompasses all of these. To work in research is to recognize that knowledge is not static. Everyone in the research community shares the responsibility to test our knowledge and to transform it. The challenge will be to find ways of bringing to the process of instruction the passion for discovery that drives research. The students today should master the skills and tools of research as part of their basic education. To give our students this mastery, we must create a learning environment in which research and instruction are integrated. And that environment would extend past school into our working lives so that we can continually renew our knowledge, skills, and outlook. If we create this lifelong environment for learning, we will have found new ways of empowering individuals, not in isolation from each other, but with pathways for rich communication and effective collaboration. And the transformation that I'm calling for, shifting focus from the institution to the individual, has a close parallel in history. You know, in medieval Europe, people were subservient to the institutions of the church and feudal hierarchies. And then came the Renaissance, which redefined the individual as the epicenter of intellectual activity. It did more than change people's perspective of the world. It literally invented it. The medieval painter depicted great religious events with the most important figures appearing the largest. And composition reflected ideology. Then drawing styles changed. The Renaissance artist drew figures and buildings in perspective, the way they appeared to the individual observer. And for the first time, point of view came into the world. The many forces which converged to bring about the Renaissance galvanized around one key technology, printing. The rise of printing led with astonishing speed to an explosion of literacy. The result was a new self-esteem for the individual, a wealth of invention, an excitement for the power of wonderful ideas. And we are today in need of a second renaissance, which, like the first, can also be galvanized by technology. Today we are on the verge of creating new tools which, like the press, will empower individuals, unlock worlds of knowledge, and forge a new community of ideas. Now, I'd like to share with you a glimpse of 3 core technologies and the tools they support in creating a new environment of lifetime learning. We believe that the tools that show most promise for the new learning environment build on these core technologies. They're hypermedia, simulation, and artificial intelligence. And each of these technologies alone will enrich the educational process. Each gains additional strength when learners can share resources over networks. And finally, when these technologies can be fully integrated with each other, they will fuel a 21st century renaissance. Now, hypermedia, it's a new word for many of us, but computer visionary Ted Nelson has been promoting the concept of hypermedia for almost 3 decades. But only recently have commercial implementations appeared on the market with Apple's HyperCard, Owl's Guide, and others. In broad terms, hypermedia is the delivery of information in forms that correspond to the natural patterns of human thought. It allows you to make instant choices about where you want to go next. And what this means for instruction and research is that content is not bound by organization. Instead, content and organization become complementary tools that act on each other to deepen our understanding of the world around us. Now, we're going to demonstrate an example of a hypermedia learning center called HyperPath. Steve Erdy, a researcher and physician from Cornell University Medical College, will conduct this live demonstration. It was developed at Cornell for the Department of Pathology using Guide. On the screen, we have a hypertext document which outlines different topics in the course. And we're going to use the system to explore the physical effects of exposure to asbestos. It's a common problem in old buildings today, as you know. Using the HyperPath index, we locate asbestos and decide to examine the effect of the exposure on human cells. So we click on asbestos within cells. And this opens a document from a lecture about general cell injury. And we see visual cues that represent links to related information, such as illustrations and other lectures. Now, the color icon, for example, indicates a link to a library of over 24,000 video disc images from which it retrieves an image that relates to our subject matter. And this image depicts asbestos damage within the cells. Any text marked in boldface can unfold new layers of information. And by unfolding this selection of text, we see a microscopic view of the asbestos within a cell. Now, the phrase tissue damage is underlined, indicating that we can delve even deeper there. And a note pops up within a recent article from a scientific journal on tissue damage caused by asbestos exposure. Now, since breathing asbestos fibers can cause a type of lung cancer, we'll examine one of these types of lung cancer in greater depth using a cross-reference. Toward the bottom of the screen, the phrase in italics is a reference to another lecture in the pathology course related to this particular disease. And here we see a schematic of different locations of tumors in the lung. And we have the ability to examine them more closely through the images on video disc and even through digital images that appear in windows on the computer monitor. Well, this type of cross-reference can be used to connect courses that present related material so that you can explore in any direction. In a sense, hypermedia is nothing new at all. A researcher in a library using a card catalog and reference materials can follow one idea as it leads to another. And hypermedia doesn't change that process. It merely accelerates it and it enriches it. It makes images, sounds, video, and film work together. But until recently, personal computers were too limited to address it. Today, however, desktop computers can have more information online than the largest mainframes managed some 10 years ago. And soon we will come to expect high-capacity magnetic hard disks, optical media such as CD-ROM, and high-speed networks as standard system components. Just as hypermedia offers a new paradigm for exploring vast amounts of information, the second core technology, simulation, pushes the boundaries of experimentation. Simulation moves beyond the what to the how and why. Now this approach is represented by an application tool called Simul. It's developed by Advent, a French software company, which is demonstrating this product here at Macworld today. Just as spreadsheets allow us to model what-if questions numerically, this software provides vivid graphic animations of data, whether in physics, chemistry, electronics, or economics. Now, with the help of Doug Doyle and Jim Takasuka of Apple, who are backstage performing this live demonstration, we will look at a simple simulation, the bouncing ball. Here we see a familiar sight, the steady drop in height of a bouncing ball. And the rate of decrease is based on a set of properties: gravity, the elasticity of the ball, and the surface. And if we change the properties, the program calculates the effects and then makes them visible. So we can ask, how would a bouncing ball behave on the planet Neptune? Now we know that Neptune is more massive than the Earth, so we'll change the value of gravity from -0.4 of Earth to -2.4 for Neptune. And the ball loses a lot of its bounce. You know, this could be a double simulation. It could be either bouncing ball on Neptune or last Friday on the stock market. Here's another simulation using the same program, and this one's a corking machine. Now this is a real machine with which we interact. We can manipulate it, we can change it, improve it, we can even break it. And just as with the bouncing ball, we can experiment with changing the parameters of the simulation. As with a real machine, all our parts must be built to exacting specifications. And if we misjudge the dimensions, we will cork no wine before it's time. Simulation and hypermedia tools exist today. As they come into more widespread use, we will find two things happening. First, authors and publishers will continue to enrich our libraries of subject matter. And second, developers will continue to make the underlying tools more powerful. We will have full 3D motion graphics and stunning images on CD-ROM. But perhaps the most spectacular advance will not be in the presentation level, but will lie deeper in the programming. Just a short way into the future, we will see artificial intelligence emerge as a core technology. Combined with our other core technologies, artificial intelligence will boost simulations and hypermedia to new levels of realism and usefulness. Intelligent agents that can learn a user's preferences and search strategies will be sent to prowl among remote databases and bring back specific information. And these future systems are not that far away. Systems that will enable you to drive through libraries, museums, and databases or institutional archives. These tools won't just take you to the doorstep of these great resources as sophisticated computers do now. They will invite you deep inside, interpreting and explaining, converting vast quantities of information into personalized knowledge. Now, last year I wrote a book called Odyssey, and I talked not just about our computers of today, but what we might expect out in the early 21st century. Now we know that it takes some 10 to 15 years for technology to move from the laboratories out into the commercial world. In fact, most of the technologies that we have in Macintosh were developed long before Apple Computer was even founded as a company. So what we tried to do was to say, what could we expect based on what's in the laboratories now, early in the 21st century in the commercial world? And then, having written about it, the next question I asked was, well, why couldn't we simulate it and take a look at it and see what it looks like, see whether we recognize it, do we like what we see? We call it the Knowledge Navigator, and I'd like to show you for the next 4 or 5 minutes a simulation of what we think the Macintosh of the early 21st century might look like.
Research team in Guatemala, just checking in. Robert Jordan, a second semester junior, requesting a second extension on his term paper. And your mother reminding you about your father.
Surprise birthday party next Sunday.
Today you have a faculty lunch at 12 o'clock. You need to take Kathy to the airport by 2. You have a lecture at 4:15 on deforestation in the Amazon rainforest.
Right. Let me see the lecture notes from last semester. No, that's not enough. I need to review more recent literature. Pull up all the new articles I haven't read yet.
Journal articles only?
Fine.
Your friend Jill Gilbert has published an article about deforestation in the Amazon and its effects on rainfall in the sub-Sahara. It also covers drought's effect on food production in Africa and increasing imports of food.
Contact Jill.
I'm sorry, she's not available right now. I left a message that you had called.
Okay. Let's see. There's an article about 5 years ago, Dr. Flemson or something. He really disagreed with the direction of Jill's research.
John Fleming of Uppsala University. He published in the Journal of Earth Science of July 20 of 2006.
Yes, that's it. He was challenging Jill's projection of the amount of carbon dioxide being released to the atmosphere through deforestation. I'd like to recheck his figures.
Here's the rate of deforestation he predicted.
And what happened? He was really off. Give me the University Research Network. Show only universities with geography nodes. Show Brazil. Copy the last 30 years at this location at 1 month intervals.
Excuse me, Jill Gilbert is calling back.
Great. Put her through.
Hi, Mike. What's up?
Jill, thanks for getting back to me. Well, I guess that new grant of yours hasn't dampened your literary abilities. Rumor has it that you've just put out the definitive article on deforestation.
Aha. Is this one of your typical last-minute panics for lecture material?
No. That's not until,
4:15.
Well, it's about the effects that reducing the size of the Amazon rainforest can have outside of Brazil. I was wondering, it's not really necessary, but,
yes?
It would be great if you were available to make a few comments. Nothing formal. After my talk, you would come up on the big screen, discuss your article, and then answer some questions from the class.
And bail you out again? Well, I think I could squeeze that in. You know, I have a simulation that shows the spread of the Sahara over the last 20 years. Here, let me show you.
Nice. Very nice. I've got some maps of the Amazon area during the same time. Let's put these together.
Great. I'd like to have a copy of that for myself.
What happens if we bring down the logging rate to 100,000 acres per year? Interesting. I can definitely use this. Thanks for your time, Jill. I really appreciate it.
No problem. But next time I'm in Berkeley, you're buying the dinner.
Dinner, right.
See ya, 4:15.
Bye-bye.
While you were busy, your mother called again to remind you to pick up the birthday cake.
Fine. Print this article before I go.
Now printing.
Okay, I'm going to lunch now. If Kathy calls, tell her I'll be there at 2 o'clock. Also, find out if I can set up a meeting tomorrow morning with, Tom Lee.
Enjoy your lunch. Hello, Professor Bradford is away at the moment. Would you like to leave a message?
Michael, this is your mother. I know that you're there. I'm just calling to remind you to call your sister and pick up.
Now, I've been advised by Apple's lawyers to tell you that the Knowledge Navigator will not be shipping in 1988. But on the other hand, the film is not a fantasy either. It's based on work that is now taking place in corporate and university research centers. And if you walk around the Macworld exhibit hall today, you'll see how firmly the roots of the Knowledge Navigator are planted. Look at the communications and connectivity products that let Macintosh exchange information with other desktop computers, with fax machines, with minis, and with mainframes. There's a tremendous future ahead for Macintosh, I believe, with electronic messaging and facsimile. This may well be one of the biggest sleeper Macintosh market opportunities for the late 1980s. Look at what is now possible in music, video production, and hypermedia. I think you'll be impressed with the tremendous innovation third-party developers have accomplished since last year's Macworld, using our Macintosh SE and Macintosh 2 as more powerful platforms. My own sense is that presentations may eventually be a bigger Macintosh market than desktop publishing, simply because the preferred method of communication in today's work environment is the presentation, not the memorandum. From informal interactive presentations using products like Kodak's new Data Show HR projection pad, to formal presentations which take advantage of advanced color presentation technology. Now, there are a number of new products that you'll see here which take advantage of color quick draw in the Macintosh 2. Color scanners, 35mm slide imaging products such as the Mirror's film printer, and high-resolution color printers. Also, look at exciting color presentation software like Cricut Presents, VideoWorks 2, and Claris's new MacDraw 2. And you can see a variety of 24-bit per pixel color products such as Supermax Pixel Paint and other 24-bit painting, drawing, animation, and CAD/CAM systems. Yesterday's announcement by Microsoft and Genegraphics will enable Macintosh users to access high-end slide-making services, much the way our PostScript connection gave us a link to sophisticated typesetting equipment. Yes, the personal computer is becoming as galvanizing as the printing press in simulating large change in the world and in creating an environment for innovation and new ideas. But let's also remember that the printing press never wrote a single book. Authors write books. And so too with the new technologies. They will only bear fruit if we recognize that value lies in the ability to empower individuals. The emerging technologies I've talked about and the products on view here today are only platforms. They are opportunities. They are possibilities. At Macworld today, though, you will see the tallest of platforms, the richest of opportunities, and the broadest of possibilities that I know of. The Macintosh CPUs we introduced last year are creating an avalanche of personal creativity and achievement. But the 21st Century Knowledge Navigator shows us that the journey to evolve the amazing Macintosh has only just begun. This is an adventure of passion and romance, not just progress and profits. Together, we set a new course for the world which promises to elevate the self-esteem of the individual rather than a future of subservience to impersonal institutions. There is, I believe, a new 21st century renaissance in the making, which promises a rebirth and revival of learning and culture unleashed by new technologies. It will bridge the gaps between the arts and sciences. It will signify the emergence of an integrated environment for lifelong learning. It will be the key to adding economic value in a global information age economy. Most important, each of us, as enthusiasts and evangelists, can personally make a difference in this odyssey. Thank you very much.